Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the debut album from Shredders called Dangerous Jumps. Oh, you thought I was gonna miss this, or that because it's very much a between-album side project that it would be a lower priority, did you? Well, to be completely truthful, up until very recently, Shredders wasn't really on my radar. I knew that P.O.S. and Sims were working with Lazerbeak and Paper Tiger on something, but I assumed it would be an EP or something, or maybe a few scattered singles until Dessa put out her next full-length project, or they started work on another Doomtree record. And if anything, it felt a little bit too soon. While I hadn't really loved P.O.S.'s Chill Dummy, it wasn't even a year old yet. And given how Sims' More Than Ever remains one of the best hip-hop albums of 2016, I would have thought he would have given it a little bit more solo shelf life. But then again, I'm not really complaining about a new project from this crew, because hip-hop has had a weird 2017. There have been too many great records to call it a bad year, but it seems like the gulf in quality between said records and much of the rest that got the hype and popularity is vast. That feeling of strangeness, coupled with only really two hip-hop records I would say are outright incredible in 2017, those being Brick Body Kids Still Daydream by Open Mike Eagle and Run the Jewels 3, and the latter barely even qualifies, it meant that I was eager for something out of the Doomtree collective, if only to bring in a sound with consistent, hard-hitting, experimental quality and real lyrical punch. And while Dessa wasn't on it, and P.O.S. can frustrate me as an MC, Sims is currently surging on a creative role right now, and I really wanted to see where he would take his bars and content. So okay, what did I find on Dangerous Jumps? Well, here's the thing. I'm naturally inclined to treat this record as both more and less than what it really is. On the one hand, it's just over a half an hour of relentlessly aggressive, hard-hitting bangers with tight rapping and the sort of loose, braggadocious content that you would expect from this sort of side project. But on the other hand, it's a Doomtree side project, and given that these MCs, I'm naturally inclined to start digging into the more abstract lyrics for meaning that might not actually be there. In other words, it's a lot of fun for what it is, but it's not exactly an essential listen. If you're expecting the depth you found on, say, Chill Dummy or More Than Ever or really any Doomtree release, you might be left wanting. It's pretty short, abrupt, intended just to bang hard, and it mostly accomplishes that. So let's start off with our two MCs, where you've got an interesting balance of personalities, and yes, they have real chemistry. P.O.S. is a more expressive rapper and carries a little bit more natural charisma, but you can tell that Sims is working overtime in terms of tight lyrical construction and his own off-kilter brand of expressiveness, and thus it should be surprising nobody that Sims, at least to me, feels like the greater draw on Dangerous Jumps. Now granted, some of this might have to be residual problems that I have with P.O.S. He's got a bad habit of just leaving rhymes dangling that can make for several of the open-ended references sound even more disconnected, or that this production might favor Sims a little bit more given that what he was working with on More Than Ever, but it's more doing Sims a disservice to not highlight how meticulous and yet kind of unstable his delivery is. Intense but never angry to the point of losing control. Both these guys are rapping with the aggressive confidence that has always kind of characterized their hallmark, with that hint of desperation. But if P.O.S. is more in his angry comfort zone, Sims is walking a tightrope across a cliff, and that naturally will draw my ear more. There's more tension there. And Mictian shows up for 2 songs and 2 short verses. Good stuff, but nothing that really blew me away here, gotta be honest. Now granted, it might just be that this production fits Sims' style more effectively. And if you're familiar with the massive walls of alien synth balanced against the dense cymbal fills and the jagged subtle samples of melody careening against the pulsating bass lines that filled up More Than Ever, well, Dangerous Jumps is definitely in similar territory, only further stripped down if anything. Hell, for the first 4 or so songs on the record, the melodic samples are sliced thinner than ever against some of that more trap-inspired percussion. And yes, as such, they don't really have some of that same gargantuan presence that made the bangers on More Than Ever hit with such impact for me, or the same sense of atmosphere that gave that last Doomtree record such swell, but again, it's a side project that is intending to be a little bit simpler and leaner in its focus. That does make a certain amount of sense if that was the consistent approach for the entire album, because from there the record gradually picks up more atmosphere and layers courtesy of the distant synth horns and the flutters of chiptune and this fattened bass beat. Then not only do the grooves feel a lot more burly and muscular, the songs they pick up a fair amount of heft that they had been kind of missing early on. Now, whether all this feels stable or adds up to a strong stronger hook, that's kind of tougher to say. A fair few of these songs run for less than 3 minutes, and tracks like Flippin' Cars, they don't even have a hook, which really, for any Doomtree affiliated project, seems to kind of be missing the point entirely. They build a lot of their strength on great hooks. But there are definitely progressions and tonal choices that I like. The brighter keys drop behind Sims's verse on Xanthrax, the groaning rumbles that build up some real depth on Nia Long, the synth horns and the guitar fragments echoing against the burly bass line and low tone that's driving more of the melody behind Style Boys, the sputtering rubbery tones that flesh out the more spacious Lion's Mouth, the massive horn-driven bouncy groove of Heater Session, and of course, the crushing, unstable warp behind Entertainment that can challenge pretty much anything Arca has delivered in the past 3 years of his experimental electronics and beat it handily. All this sounds pretty damn good. It's just that many of these individual pieces can't help but feel a little bit underdeveloped and aborted, lacking a stronger tune at their core to really make them feel as anthemic as they really could. And you know, a big part of that does tie into the content, where I gave this record a full 10 to 12 listens, really working to decipher what P.O.S. and Sims are weaving in their tangled, layered, kind of off-kilter lyrics. Now, at first you would be inclined to dismiss some of this as just so much more aggressive posturing in a vein of what you've heard from them before, similar to what LP and Killer Mike delivered on that first Run the Jewels release, more just flexing, albeit a little bit less outwardly direct than what Run the Jewels 1 typically delivered. And believe me, that's fine. Both these guys have enough endlessly quotable lines and turns of phrase that could easily fill that mold, but if you probe a little deeper, you'll realize that Sims and P.O.S. are coming from a very different place of security, and a loose theme does start to crystallize. Risk. Now, sure, some of these moments are just intended as pump-up bragging for them, refining the power of their words, which they view as quintessential, but any flexing, it's rooted in those words because that's mostly all they have. A narrowly focused weapon that wielding it requires so much careful skill, or it could all go careening off the rails. Hell, take the moment where P.O.S. has to explain and defend a Prodigy lyric on Flippin' Cars, inspiring his choice of words, and you can tell that it's killing him slowly to even do it. At this point, as he says on Nia Long, he's not competing against anybody but himself when it comes to his wordplay, but a song later, you can tell that he still does care about that audience, with a pretty inspired Zelda line on Style Boys as he falls hard and fast for those who are just as real and driven as he might be it a partner or his audience, even if deep down he knows it might as well be a losing battle to wing them in. Now, Sims, well, he's more measured and abstract in his own headspace, questioning what keeps him on some stable track on songs like Fly Like a Dare, because for as much anger as P.O.S. is bringing, it's Sims that seems much more on the verge of teetering out of control and floating away, especially in an increasingly hostile world where he has to tether himself, even as the political subtext just remains kind of subtext. I actually wish it moved more into text. And on songs like Lion's Mouth, he knows it's part abstract curiosity, part conscious altruism, and part death wish that has him pushing his pride further and further in his bars. Just like on More Than Ever, there's a sense of quiet desperation that subtly ramps up the tension. But for both men, this record runs a little bit leaner, a little bit more streamlined, making what words and time they have as dope as possible because they know they might not get any more. An addictive itch they have to scratch to take that risk, to glean something even as that emotive high might push them over the edge into some, well, unstable alien territory. But as a whole, okay, look, I like this record. And for as many listens as I gave it, there's a lot worth dissecting and some phenomenal punchlines against production that once again pushes the envelope. But at the same time, there's a part of me that feels that chunks of this album are a little bit undercooked or not hitting as hard as I wanted for me. Short runtimes, content that can feel like both more and less than it might seem, and production that, while experimental and pretty hard-hitting, doesn't quite deliver the same hooks or tunes that are the level of the best from this collective. Oh, make no mistake, a fair amount of this definitely will get there. I probably like this more than Chill Dummy. But as a whole, again, it feels a little like a side project. Effective in short bursts, but not quite as sharp or potent as their best. For me, very strong 7 out of 10, definitely a recommendation, but if you're familiar with Doomtree at their best, this might underwhelm you a little bit. Of course, if you're a fan like me, you'll probably dig the hell out of it, so if you're curious, yeah, sure, a lot of great bangers here, definitely check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Folks, I wish I kind of liked this a little bit more too. It was right on the cusp of being a great record. I'm just not quite sure my critical faculty say it can get all the way there. I wish a couple more of those songs cut a little deeper emotionally for me, but still, it's a good project. Definitely buy it. Links in the description below. And I got the poll up there for all of you to tell me how wrong I am. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or support this channel, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. And that top 10 list should be coming up pretty soon, at least the next one. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.